Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Toni and I am a homeschooling mom to 4 kids. I'm going to talk today about finding good, clean books for your kids. That's something that is very important to me, to make sure that my kids are reading books, whether it's for fun or it's for school, but that are books that I can trust, that are good, clean, not going to have language, not going to have God's name in vain, that are just going to be good quality books, even if they're just books for fun. It is so hard, especially as my daughters are getting older. It seems like the older they get, the more questionable things authors tend to throw in there, which is really irritating to me. And I don't have time to read all these books before they read them. I don't know about you, but there's no way that would ever be able to happen. So I have 2 resources that I want to share with you today that make mom's life so much easier so that you don't have to pre-read every single book before your child reads it. You can go on these 2 websites. Someone's already done the work for you, and it is such a lifesaver. So if you want to find out what those 2 are, then stay tuned. Okay, so the first website I'm going to tell you about, I have known about for years and years, for movies. I recently discovered that you can use this website to look up books. And I've been surprised when I have told people about this and just assuming everybody's heard of this website, and a lot of people haven't. So I want to make sure I share this with you. It's completely free, and it's put on by Focus on the Family, and it's called pluggedin.com. I've been using this for years, as I said, for movies. Every time my kids have a movie night, they'll usually look on even Disney Plus, or what we used to have, Netflix, Amazon, whatever. If there's a new movie on there that they've never watched, they'll come up and say, Mom, can we watch this? Because you can't always trust ratings when it comes to movies anymore. You guys probably have already figured that out. But what they'll do is come up and say, hey, Mom, can we watch this movie? Can you look it up? So I go on pluggedin.com. For movies, I would say at least 95% of the time, they have a good in-depth review of most movies that we look up. So what we'll do is go on there, and I'll type in the title of the movie and then go down, and it says if there's language, it says if there's any sexual content, it says anything about violence, and it breaks down the story plot, anything that you need to know as a mom to look at this and say, hey, is this something I want my kids to watch? And then I tell them yes or no. They either go look for another movie for me to look up, or they can go watch that one. Well, I recently discovered that they do books on there too, which is amazing because, like I said, I don't have time to read every single book. I barely have time to read books for me. So having time to read every single book my girls want to read before they read it, it's just not a reality. There's no way this could happen. Just so you guys know, this video is not sponsored by either of these websites. I just want to share with you what I have discovered to be super helpful for me, and I want to make sure you guys know about it. So the first one with pluggedin.com, you go on either their movies or their books. So if you click on books and you type in the name, if it's a well-known book, there's a good chance you'll find it. Now with books, it's probably hit or miss. It's maybe 50-50 where there's a book that I look up for my daughter that I'll actually find the review on there for it. Sometimes I don't find it and I have to kind of look other ways, or I'm just going to have to pull the book out and flip through it and kind of just look for some, keywords that I don't want in that book. That's kind of what I end up doing if she really wants to read a book that I can't find on the website. But I'm going to show you a screen recording here in a minute of how I looked this up, and I have a couple books that I've looked up in there. I picked 3 different books that my daughter has bought. Actually, one of these, this one I think was given to us. So this one was one I wanted to show you just so that you can see. I know that this is, well, I've never read it, but I have heard from many Christians that this is a good book. It's called My Side of the Mountain by Jean Craighead George. And it is a Newbery honor, which I've learned too that these medals don't necessarily mean anything. I think it depends on who is judging the book. That doesn't mean this is going to be a good quality read. It could have very questionable things in it. This book, I've heard enough from the right people. This is good. So I wanted to give you a picture of what this is going to look like when you look it up. But I would type in My Side of the Mountain at the top of the page. Then I would scroll down. If you want to read what the plot summary is about, which you could obviously read on the back of the book, it's got that at the top. It has spiritual elements. It has sexual content. That's something that I always look up. And it's got profanity or language in there, which tells you if it uses God's name in vain. it tells you whether there's going to be an actual curse word, profanity in it, or even things like stupid or idiot, or things that are like, some families might consider those as bad words, but they're not, actually. So it's kind of nice that it breaks that down, because like for my, my oldest daughter, I don't care if she watches a movie that somebody calls somebody stupid. I don't want it to be in there 25 times, because that's obviously not going to be any sort of good for anyone. That's going to be a pretty negative movie. But if it's got one or two of that, I don't care as much. Now for my 5-year-old, do I want him to be watching a movie that says the word stupid or idiot a few times? No, because he's like a little parrot and he'll start saying it. So that is so helpful in looking for movies, like I said, but for books too. This is something that for me, even as an adult, I don't want to read things that I don't say in my normal language. I don't take God's name in vain. So for me to actually have to go in an adult book that I'm reading that many people might have no problem with, but if it's saying using God's name in vain, I don't say that. I don't want to read it. So I don't read books like that. I don't want my kids to read books like that. And some of you may think that's extreme, and that's fine, but those are my standards for reading. I also don't want any language in my book. I have read books before. I started a book this summer, and it was so good. It was an audiobook, but it was a really, really good book. The storyline was just very interesting, and I was like on the edge of my seat, and then just all this language started piling in. I don't want to hear it. I just don't. So I stopped reading the book, even though it was probably the storyline was going to be good. It's nice to have tools like this to be able to look books up and see what is in them, and Plugged In is great. So this was one that didn't have anything questionable in it. Then I also have Dragon Rider by Cornelia Funk, and I believe this was one that my daughter had read, Inkheart, and I believe Inkheart had some questionable, it at least used the word hell a few times in a way that I don't want my daughter reading. So I was kind of bummed about that, because that was one that I'd heard a lot of good stuff about it. Before she had read it, she found this at the thrift store and she bought it. And so I immediately once we found out the other book had bad language in it, I was like, this one's probably not going to be good either, but I'll look it up. Well, this one doesn't have anything bad in it. So it's kind of confusing. I don't know why authors do that, why one book would use, a bad word a couple times, and then the same author with a different book doesn't. But this book, if you can see, it had nothing questionable. It had, it didn't have any bad language. I didn't have any sexual content or anything like that. So it's nice to go on here real quick and see that sometimes even by author, it may vary. I don't find that happening a lot, but it has happened a few times. So you do have to watch that. But that was really good to be able to say, okay, I don't want you reading Inkheart, but you can read Dragon Rider, or don't read either of them. Either is fine. But it was nice to be able to look this up and actually see what is in here that is questionable. Now here's another book. She took the cover off because we like books that I love what they look like without the dust cover on. And this one's real pretty and shiny, and so my daughter did the same thing. But this is The Land of Stories. This is another one that I think I may have heard of on a Christian homeschooling Facebook page or something like that when I was looking for book ideas for my daughter. And I'd heard that this was really good, so we looked. I think she bought this at a thrift store too, and sometimes I try really hard even to pull up pluggedin.com at the thrift store, because a lot of times that's where we get our books, and she'll say, Mom, this looks so good, can you look it up? If we're in a rush and I don't have time and it's like 25 cents, sometimes I'll let her get it. If a quick flip through looks okay. This, I think, was one of those instances where it looked really good, but it did have bad words in it that I was not comfortable with her reading. So we didn't read this, and it's a bummer because it's a pretty book, and I'm sure the storyline is good, but you've got to have some sort of, moral compass where this is not going to allowed in our family. You've got to have that line to draw. So this is a good website for that. I've really found this helpful, even for me. Typically it's just for my kids' books, but it's been really helpful, and I find that tween age, my daughter's in that. She's read she's just been devouring books these last couple of years, especially this year. She's just like every couple of days, like, I finished my book, and I'm like, oh, like that's super exciting, but now we have to go find another one that's going to be clean and good. So, so especially for her, we're getting into that YA. She'll be 12 soon. So she's like ready for that step up, but not quite, because I also don't want romance. We're not ready to start putting all those thoughts into her head yet, and definitely don't want language and things like that. So it's nice to be able to look those things up and see if that's going to be good or not. So definitely check that out. Put that as a favorites on your browser, and keep that as a tool. Okay, so this next website that I found, I'm really excited to share with you about. I just discovered this yesterday. Now, I have talked about my library before on my videos and how we live in a small town, so small town libraries are amazing because they're helpful. The ladies, they know us by name, and they do their best to help us when we are looking around searching for books. A lot of times, one of the ladies at least will come over and say, hey, do you need help finding anything? That's not something that you typically find in, I know I'm generalizing, but I have moved many times and we've lived in big cities. And when you go to a library at a big city, you're not really going to be approached and asked for help, in my experience. So I've loved our small town library. But this leads into why I'm telling you. Yesterday we were at the library. Our library is open, which was so exciting. My kids were like seriously acting like it was Christmas. It was so exciting. So we went into the library and got to look on the shelves ourselves, because we've had a couple months where they've been closed, and we had to like try to remember, okay, well, I guess get something from this series or this author, or we'd ask them, for help, and they'd kind of look stuff up. But it was really hard not being able to actually go in the library and look on the shelves and pick books up and choose that way. But they're open now. So we went in yesterday, and my daughter, who's 11, she's almost 12, she was looking around in the section that she normally looks in. She's read a lot of them. There's some that she hasn't read, and she's also one of those that, like for me, 99% of the time, I'm going to pick a murder mystery. That's just it's my favorite kind of book, and that's usually what I will read. Either that or something completely opposite and nonfiction, something like that, maybe a biography or something. But she is all over the place. So she likes mysteries. Sometimes she likes funny books. Sometimes she likes historical fiction, but she's very kind of all over the place. She likes adventure sometimes. She does like magic and things in books, which I'm okay with to a certain degree. Anyway, yesterday she was looking through. She was kind of like, oh, I don't know what I want to read. I'm not in the mood for a mystery. And so the lady came over and asked us if she could help. And I was like, yeah, maybe you can. So I told her to let the library lady know what she was. I guess librarian would be the better word than library lady. Anyway, I told her to let the librarian know what is it that you're looking for right now. And she was kind of like, oh, I'm not really sure. And so I said, well, she's not really into a mystery at the moment, but she kind of wanted to look at these young adult books. But I told the librarian, I said, I don't want her reading anything with romance in it. I mean, a little bit of like, oh, she likes this boy or whatever. Maybe isn't that big of a deal. But she doesn't need to be reading all that and getting her head filled with becoming boy crazy. So we're going to just avoid that for the time being. So I said I really didn't want anything that's going to have a lot of romance. I don't want anything that uses God's name in vain. And I really don't want anything that has any bad language in it. And these librarians may not be Christian, but they're still good at figuring out like, okay, well, this series is good, and I think this series is pretty clean and things like that. And you can look on the sides of the books, and they will have, at least at our library, they have little tags that'll say, mystery, or it'll say horror, or it'll say, what else, like humor. But there's also a tag that says inspirational. So a lot of times that means somebody's already done the work for me and knows that this is a good, clean book. My daughter will I'm like, we don't have a lot of time. Make sure you pick a book that says inspirational on the side. And that's what she'll do. But today we wanted to kind of branch out a little bit, but I still wanted something clean. Well, the one librarian that was talking to me, she said, you may want to look up this website called Literary Map. And I was like, well, what is that? I've never heard of that. And she said, this is one where you can type in an author that you like, that you love that kind of book, and it pulls up all these other authors that are similar. It's so cool. This is like the coolest thing, and I'm so excited that she told me about this. So I typed in, just to see how it works, I typed in my favorite author, Terry Blackstock. She's a Christian author, Christian murder mysteries. So for me, when I want to branch out and try a different author, but I still kind of want that kind of book, you can see Terry Blackstock's in the middle here, and then you can see all these different authors around her. The closest ones to her name are going to be authors that are going to write similar books, very, very similar, which you can probably guarantee are going to be clean. They're going to be probably Christian. The closest are going to be just like hers, which are going to be Christian. It's going to mention God and things like that. The further away you get, it's still going to be similar, but maybe a little bit different. Probably are still going to be clean. The further out you get from the main author is where you're going to see maybe the same genre, the same like style of book. Those you may want to be careful about whether they're going to be Christian or not, because I think the further out you get, just the more different it's going to be, but it's still similar. I just thought this was so cool. And then you can click on a different name and it'll show you people that are similar to them. So I did this with some of my girls' favorite authors. So I clicked, I asked my daughter to come in. I said, name me one of your favorite authors. So she told me one. I typed it in here, and then you can see all the authors around her. And she was like, Mom, look, I know that one too. And oh, I've read that one too. And going around here, she recognized a lot of these authors' names. But then there's some new ones that we've never heard of, but they're close enough in that, in that literary map that they're probably going to be books that you can try out, or anything that's written by this author. And I just thought this was the coolest tool. So we tried this with a few different authors here, and you can see how this works, and the names just kind of move around. And I have never heard anybody talk about this before, so I don't know if this is like a librarian's, secret that she shared with us, but I'm going to tell you guys about it. But this was so cool. So if you guys go on here, literarymap.com, you can do this. It's very simple. There's not much to it. You've got to know the author's name, but all you need is one good author. Then you can see all the people around them. And that was just amazing. That's a tool I'm going to absolutely use from now on. And I'm so excited that I heard about it. So those are my two resources for the day that I wanted to share with you. I think they're such an amazing tool for a Christian homeschool mom, or just a homeschool mom that wants to make sure her kids are reading good, clean books, good quality books that you can trust, because you definitely want them filling their minds with things that are beautiful, things that are uplifting. You don't want them reading things that are going to taint them and things that are going to tear them down or encourage them in bad ways. There's some books that my younger daughters have been into, that humor book. They like some of those books, and I'm sure there's not a whole lot wrong with them, like Dog Man. They were big into that for a while. And I just thought, okay, it's got pictures, it's fine. They think it's funny, that's fine. They were devouring those books, my two little girls. And then as we've used the Good and the Beautiful curriculum, and they were talking about, they had this checklist, which was really cool, on a book that's beautiful and a book that's not. And you can go down and see a book like Dog Man, which I'm not sure if it's necessarily, I wouldn't call it a bad book, but it definitely doesn't check any of those boxes. I mean, they use the word stupid. They do make it funny to make fun of people. And I even asked my daughter this. I was like, what kind of things in here have you seen in a book like that? And there's other ones in this genre too. I feel like that humor for that young age really is big on, poking fun at people and things like that. And that's not awful, but is it worth reading? Is it something you want your kids to be filling their minds with? I don't think it is, for me at least, for our family, because I really feel like if that's what they're reading all the time, and if they're reading the word stupid, or that they're reading about how they pick on people, or make fun of this person because of this, and the whole book is just on like, if it makes somebody laugh, it's fine. That's something they're going to start doing in their life, and I don't want that. So I just think it's really important to put a lot of thought and put a lot of your heart into helping your kids choose good quality books. It's really important for me, even you as a mom. I don't think there's anything wrong with reading murder mysteries. Now, is that as uplifting as reading, a story about somebody in the Bible? No, of course not. But it is an enjoyable read, and I make sure that the ones I read don't have questionable things or bad words or things like that. It's just kind of solving a mystery. So I think you can kind of just, like I said, draw that line of what you'll allow and what you won't. Make sure your kids know that, because I do trust my oldest daughter. There are times where, like I said, I can look up a book and it may not be on Plugged In and I can't find a review for it. And you know what I tell her? I'll say, you can go ahead and start this, but you know that if you run into anything questionable, you come tell me. And she does it. She'll bring it to me and she'll say, is this bad, Mom? And, oh, yeah, it is. And she'll stop reading it. And she's fine with that. She understands that's not something that we're going to fill our minds with. So I hope these 2 resources were really helpful for you. I hope it's something that you'll use, because I just think they're super awesome. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate you guys. I love my subscribers and I love all my viewers. I really appreciate the encouragement, and I love doing these videos and sharing things that I want to share that I think will be helpful for you guys. So if you did enjoy this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, don't forget to do that. And if you click the little bell, it'll notify you when my new videos comes out, which is every single week. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.